will have to be changed.
Is Jean-Claude Juncker right? Should protecting our European way of life post be changed? An island nation, Britain is used to standing alone. It took some time to get used to being part of Europe's club, and despite their special bond, Euroscepticism was never far away.
Passports back. We want our country back.
So when Brexit came along, was the rest of Europe surprised?
The British, since the very beginning, were part-time Europeans.
Tell us, Europe, does he have a point? Are Britons part-time Europeans? And welcome to Belgium, where the beer flows freely, but the tap water less so. The regional government of Wallonia now wants to introduce free water in public places and restaurants, but the service industry are strongly opposed. They say that free water will mean the loss of jobs. So we're asking, should restaurants be able to deny free water? Come on, Europe, have your say. Should protecting our European way of life post be changed? Are Britons part-time European? And should restaurants be able to deny free water? This is your call.
So there you go. They're the three questions that we are asking you tonight on Raw Politics, Your Call. And when you do pick up that phone, you get through to our two guests who have joined us here in the studio. So thank you very much to first Scott Ainsley, Green MEP from London. Pleasure to have you here tonight.
Lovely to be here.
And what topic do you hope people will call in tonight on, Scott?
Oh, what I hope they'll call in on? I don't know, something light-hearted, I guess. I've had quite a heavy day about Kashmir and other human rights abuses across the world, so whatever, I'm game for it.
You're
it's fine.
Keen for anything?
I'm keen for anything.
Maybe on the water issue. That's a rather fluffy issue that I think people will call in about tonight as well.
Yeah.
And we're also delighted to be joined here in the studio by Jutta Guteland, a Swedish MEP, a Swedish socialist MEP. Jutta, what story have you got your eye on tonight?
Oh, but I was going to say the free water. I think this is very important for the health of the citizens, and I think that we would save money by doing that for the whole society, and then we can afford better investment, green investment for new jobs. So,
well, there is an actual EU proposal floating around somewhere that all EU member states would have to implement that. But anyway, lots to discuss here tonight.
I want one person to call in and say that restaurants shouldn't give free water. I want you to explain why that should be the case, particularly if you live here in Belgium. Yeah. Anyway, get in touch. You know what to do. Pick up the phone. It is free at 00800 333 3700 and 2. You can also email us at rawpoll@euronews.com. We are on Skype. Love to see your delightful faces tonight. Or indeed, you can use the hashtag Raw Politics on the Twitter or the Facebook and get in touch that way. Look at that, our delightful team. They're kind of not doing any work at all down there. I'm not sure what they're doing down there. Anyway, answering the calls. Call in, you can speak to them, and then you can speak to us. We're going to get their views, your views, in a couple of minutes' time. But first, let's cross over to the ever-delightful Alex Morgan, who is sitting by in Lyon with the very latest news this hour. Good evening, Alex.
Good evening, Darren. Good evening, Maeve. Good to see you. Well, you're talking about topics there. I'm sure you can guess what the top topic is tonight. It's, of course, Brexit and the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson facing allegations that he lied to the Queen when outlining his reasons for a 5-week suspension of Parliament that began earlier this week. Well, Mr Johnson denies these claims, which come less than 24 hours after Scotland's highest civilian court ruled that the parliamentary shutdown is unlawful. Ministers have also been forced to publish the details of the government's worst-case Brexit contingency planning. In Russia, opposition activists have released video which they say shows raids on their offices by law enforcement officers. Opposition leader Alexei Navalny says more than 200 searches were carried out in 41 towns and cities. Those searched say they were told by authorities that the raids were part of an investigation into money laundering. And in France, Google is to pay more than 900 million euros to tax authorities to settle a 4-year-long investigation into fiscal fraud. The internet giant was accused of acting illegally by not declaring its activities in the country. Google passes most of its European revenues through its Dublin headquarters. Well, the French government say this new settlement would provide a precedent for legal action against other tech companies. Well, those are our top stories. Back now to you, Maeve and Darren in Brussels.
Maybe with a strong accent.
Alex, thank you very much indeed. A full news bulletin coming up at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. Brussels time, 9 p.m. 7 p.m. Sorry. 9 p.m. if you live in Eastern Europe and 7 p.m. if you live in Western Europe. Anyway, thank you for that, Alex. We're going to start off tonight with the most contentious issue we possibly have ever dealt with here in World Politics. The outrage, I think, that you are charged for water in restaurants, certainly here in Belgium and indeed in other parts of Europe. And it is fair to say that almost, I know kind of people joke about it, that beer is cheaper than water in this city, certainly in Brussels. And it's just not acceptable.
And people here are getting so angry that they've taken to Facebook and they've set up a huge campaign called Free Tap Water in Belgian restaurants. And some 400 restaurants have actually come on board in the country, which is not bad. But still, as a consumer, you often feel humiliated when you ask for a simple glass of water when you go out for dinner here. You get looked at.
€2.
Even though you might be spending a lot of money on your food. So let's get the take from our MEPs, starting with Scott, our Green MEP tonight.
Well, I think that I've been in Brussels now for how many weeks? 6 weeks. And every time I ask for tap water, they say it's not available. And I say, well, that's just ridiculous. It is ridiculous. I go about with one of these and I put fresh water in it all the time because the amount of plastic that we're wasting is ridiculous. But in terms of restaurants and bars, I sometimes have water just before I have a beer. So it's not as if I'm not going to drink something because I'm drinking water. I supplement it with wine or beer or whatever. And I think that, you know, we need it for our health.
Yes, of course we do. And the other day I went to a restaurant with my children in a pier in Belgium, and we had to buy for one small glass of water, it was €4. €4, you understand? And it was absolutely nothing. And we had pizza, so we were all extremely thirsty. And I thought, okay, I should never complain about my salary, and I would certainly not do that. But I'm thinking if you're a single mom, you have your kids, and you go out for a restaurant and you really spend your money on that and thinking, I want to do that one time. Yeah. And then you get kind of robbed for a little glass of water for your kids.
And so the sector, the restaurant trade, the hospitality trade say here that it will cost jobs, potentially thousands of jobs, if they have to give people free water. And I would say there's a simple solution to that, which is put an extra euro to we've got a fly in the studio, an extra euro to on beer. And you know what? You'd solve the problem, A, of the cost, and you could keep people in the jobs, and you might help improve people's health.
And indeed, there's a poll here, in fact, that was carried out by The Bulletin, which is an online website here in Belgium that's targeted at the expat or the English-speaking community, that says 57% of people would actually give more of a tip if they were provided with free tap water. It would make them feel in a better mood. The problem is you get quite angry when you just
the headaches get away.
They're just not great at customer service either.
Anyway, should we bring in, we got Peter, I think, on the line from Cork in Ireland. Oh, it's David. Good evening, David.
Good evening. Thank you for taking my call.
You're very welcome. Welcome to the programme. What do you feel? Are you outraged as we are?
Oh, no. I'm not saying I'm outraged, but I'm saying that access to water is very important, especially when things are very, very hot. Okay, you'll buy a Volvic and you'll pay €3 here in Ireland, or $2.60 anyway. But if I go into a restaurant, they usually put a bottle of water there on your table anyway. But access to water, you can excuse your beer, but access to water is a necessity because you can become very ill. Dehydration can kill you.
Yeah, but isn't the point, isn't it, I think, David, is that you and I or anyone else who's grown up in a country in which you're just given tap water on the table. Anyone who's been to the United States will know every restaurant you go into, the first thing you get is a jug of ice-cold water. That you can understand why it's kind of not almost like a universal right.
Yes. Also, there was a big debate here about 2 years ago now, about water charges here in Ireland.
Oh, we remember well.
So people are very touchy on the subject. But no, I do think access to water is one of the human rights. Yeah. Because if you don't get it, you'll get sick. And we want people drinking more water anyway because it dilutes whatever you're having.
Precisely.
And
more water and less
it helps
wine.
that way.
Indeed. Okay, David, thank you very much for that. Why are you
Thank you for taking my call.
Not at all.
Good night, thank you.
Do keep watching and call in again. Why are you guys not going to legislate on this? Can we start a campaign here and now?
We can start it now. I
Yes,
really
let's.
think so. And I think we could unite in the need also for this as part of a Green Deal, because to have less plastic bottles, to have people take the tap water. We also know that it's... I mean, we see it's lots of plastics in the plastic bottles, and sometimes the tap water are better even when it comes to that. So we should actually we could
You
work
would have
together
to
there.
expect a lot of lobbyists knocking on your door, though. Against
Really?
this.
Against it?
I mean, I'm just looking here. The
yeah.
Restaurant Association of Ireland, they've been trying to block it as well.
Well, look, I think every time that something like this comes up, something that should be free, like the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, you know, it's just ridiculous that they want to charge us for it. And the lobbyists will always say that, you know, this is going to impact our bottom line. It's nonsense for the reasons that you've already pointed out and the scaremongering that goes on. But I mean, look, many people took to the street in Belgium, I believe, to say that they were, you know, they're concerned about climate breakdown. They were concerned about plastic in our oceans. I understand that thousands of, can't remember the weight, but of plastic is found on Belgian beaches or beaches around where people go on holiday, and they're sick, fed up of seeing the sight of it. So we need to, you're right, we need to get rid of the plastic
And I don't know if
bottles.
you've been to Brussels Airport, but you can drop in €1, pick up your plastic bottle, and that's actually donated that money then to UNICEF, who are trying to fight against plastic waste. So that's absolutely ridiculous as
It's
well.
insane.
And this movement in Belgium are trying to work with Brussels Airport in order to provide a better solution. So let's see how they get on. Well, let's bring in Paul, our next caller. Paul, good evening to you.
Good
What's
evening,
your
how are you?
take here on whether or not restaurants should be able to deny free water? What do you think?
Well, I think they should provide free water because obviously you're paying a fortune sometimes in some restaurants for the food. I think you should get free water, really. Why not? They should, really, yeah.
And what about where you're from there? Do you get free water in the restaurants and bars where you go?
Well, I usually don't frequent in restaurants, but if I ask for water in pubs or cafes, I do get it sometimes now and again, yeah.
And have you ever been abroad on holidays and asked for it and been looked like
No,
as if you're
I
a
haven't been
thief?
abroad on holiday, no. Maybe that's a point, but obviously, you know, obviously they should provide free water because it's a necessity, and like I said before, you pay for 40 for the food, so
There you
should
go.
get something free for change. And not lab is not for free, but for water it should be, you know, in some ways.
And Paul, I feel you would get up and storm out of a restaurant if they'd said that you had to pay £3 or £4 for a glass of
But
tap
I wouldn't
water.
storm out, no. But obviously, if you got paid for it, haven't you? But obviously, it'd be great if it was for free. That's all, you know.
So if they started charging for it, I mean, do you think essentially maybe the government should intervene and say that actually, you know, water, as you say, is so important?
I think they should intervene. Yeah, government should intervene. Yeah, they should.
Okay, thank you, Paul. That's Paul
Cheers, all the best. Thank you.
from Staffordshire there in England. Again, where water's free, but it's also extraordinary. Like, I don't want to. We're going to hop on. We're not going to hop on about this the entire program because I am slightly ranting about it. But also, like when you go to places like gyms here and everything else, there is not water on tap because there's just this kind of different thought process that water is a commodity, and they would point out, well, you know, it does cost money to produce water. That's what these restaurants would say. They do have to pay their bills, and particularly in Brussels, I think they've got quite hard water, so it takes a lot more effort.
And they argue that they give us bread and butter for free.
There, we do get bread and butter.
Yeah. But first of all, we see good examples where water is provided. So you can get tapped water and also order your other things and that the restaurant survives. So we see that in many countries, you mention it yourself. And then also for the public health, I mean, we talked about why it's important for the environment, but for the public health, I mean, who has the money, I was actually thinking when I was at the restaurant, do my kids need one more glass of water? And I don't think I should think like that. I should think he's thirsty. Of course, I will buy that glass of water. And for someone with little money, how do you handle that situation?
Is there genuinely anything the Parliament or the Commission can do, or do we know? Is this the competency of national governments? I mean, is there anything that
Well, as far as I know, I haven't been to any other European city where I've been denied water when I ask for it in a restaurant. It seems to be a particularly Belgian thing. Am I right in saying that?
And their neighbours Luxembourg as well.
And Luxembourg as well.
This campaign has rubbed off in Luxembourg too.
Ah, right. OK. Well, I think it's time they just got on board with everyone else and just said, do you know what? Yeah, we'll charge them for the bread and olives. I mean, look, nothing's really free, is it?
That's also true.
It'll be a premium anyway, but I think water should be free.
Hike up the bill. Well, we've got a Belgium. Nicholas, I think, is on the line from this very city. Nicholas, do you enjoy paying for your water in this city?
You know, I can understand the one who has a restaurant. I don't have a restaurant, but I was independent for 27 years or 7 years. And the Belgian government is killing all the independent people. So if you put yourself in the place of a restaurant owner, who need to run a business, who cannot take staff because the staff is costing huge in Belgium. So if you pay somebody, you cannot motivate people anymore. So you cannot engage some staff. The government is taking so huge taxes. If you open a new restaurant, you have so many regulations for fire, for special glass, for special things in the kitchen, and it's impossible to survive. And always we had also the terrorist attack. So in Brussels we have been really we had a huge crisis in the restaurants and people doesn't come out and whatever. So I can understand that in Belgium they cannot give the water for free.
So what do you think about my solution, though, is that why don't they add on an extra €2 to a beer?
Or to the main courses. I'd be happy to pay more for my main course if I could drink water all night for free.
Yeah, you know, if you take, for example, a normal drink, I can maybe understand that they give some water for free. Okay,
but as a customer, you've obviously travelled, I'm sure, to other parts of Europe. The big question is the challenges that you talk about facing the restaurants here in Brussels and indeed elsewhere in Belgium. Many would say they're the same pressures on other restaurants in other parts of Europe, but they don't charge for water. Is there a different sense of what water means to people in Belgium? I don't understand why Belgium's unique. Why is Belgium unique in this?
I think Belgium is unique because we have so high taxes to pay, and that the people, as independent people, they don't come out of their business.
But the taxes would probably, it's part of a whole society, and a society where people drink water when they are thirsty will actually provide a healthier population, and also sometimes use the water instead of the beer might actually improve your health. So in the long run, probably the society will gain from it economically, and even though the companies and the others that you're called is worried about, because it's so important that the restaurant owner can survive, of course, and that he has a healthy business.
Okay, well, it's an ongoing debate and one that's clearly not going to be settled here, but we are starting a campaign in this Parliament to try and help the good people of Belgium have free tap water. Nicholas, thank you for calling. We're going to take a quick break. Coming up next, though, we're going to be asking, should this really controversial title, Protecting Our European Way of Life, the Commission post, should that be changed? And also, are Britons, those people across the channel, are they part-time Europeans?
There you go. Our number is 800 33 37 002. Our lines will be open for almost a half an hour, so do get in touch. You can also tweet to us tonight using that hashtag #RoyalPolitics.
We'll see you.
Short break.
Couple of minutes. Welcome back to Raw Politics on Thursday, September 12th. Got the day right today. It's Tuesday yesterday. Live from the European Parliament, and we have got very, very animated tonight about free water and whether water should be free.
And if you've just joined us, you're watching Raw Politics, Your Call. It's your opportunity to get in touch and tell us what you think about all the topics that we're addressing tonight. We've been talking about that issue about water, whether or not restaurants should be able to deny free water or not. And we've lots of comments coming in. We've got one from Roland. He tweeted into us tonight to said, I've never had something for free in a restaurant. He said even when the water is free, the service, glass, electricity and the cleaning is not free. And we've another comment as well from William Brown tonight on Facebook. And he says, water, just like air, should be free. And he said it's served here for free in California and our restaurants do continue to thrive.
We watched in California, couldn't see. I mean, I suppose my final point on this, I promise, my final point is that we know that obviously the kind of extra costs in a restaurant are included in the price, the overall price, whether it's the food or the alcohol. There's just something quite wrong about it. You having to pay for water as a separate cost. I don't know why. Anyway, let's move on to this idea about Britons being part-time Europeans. We did an interview here on Euronews today with Jean-Claude Juncker, the outgoing Commission President, who suggested that essentially Britons had never really bought into the European Union project from the start, that they were part-time, and that while Brexit was unfortunate and terrible, I mean, he didn't say this, but he essentially said, well, you know, they've decided to leave, so that's it. Scott, do you feel like you're a part-time Briton? A part-time European? You might be a part-time Briton too.
Yes, I am. I'm a part-time Briton, I'm a part-time Londoner, I'm a part-time European, and I'm a part-time world citizen. I think that I feel very much a European. I mean, I'm originally from Scotland, and our legal system and our education system has more in common with Europe than it does with the Anglo-Saxon education and legal system. So deep down in my soul, I'm European. And I think that what has happened, I mean, Mr. Juncker should come to London nowadays and see how many flags there are, the European flags that are out in London on the streets.
Do you think that was upsetting what he said? It might have upset a lot of people.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I can completely understand why he might have said that at the moment. But I mean, I think on a more serious point, if what the referendum showed was that we have been played in the UK, and we are continuing to be played. I mean, even the chair of the Parliamentary Scrutiny Committee on Elections has said, I don't think we can have a fair election because of this, all of this online influence that's going on. And if, it's going to come to a democracy near you if we don't sort out what is going on in Britain. So Europeans, please bear with us and let's sort out democracy, because it's democracy that we're fighting for.
But hasn't Jean-Claude Juncker got a point in the sense that, I mean, okay, Euroscepticism is high in other European countries, notably actually France, interestingly, but for a long time, most Britons have not bought into a more deeper, integrated, federalised Europe. They have viewed it as essentially what was the common market, the European community, and that they are part-time Europeans in the sense that they've just not been on that train that most other EU countries have been, and that's the point he was making.
He was referring, to
that. And that's a fair point, isn't it?
That they've an opt-out when it comes to the euro, they've an opt-out when it comes to home affairs, so there's lots of things that they're not obliged to do.
On the other hand, sometimes as a Swede, I feel like the little sister to Britain, and we really connect often as countries. But we are a bit smaller. So I would say that for us, who are similar in many ways, our countries are have the same approach many times. I think it's not Juncker's best quote, because I think it is a problem if you describe a country with all the different political views that people have, and with Brexit, who is so deeply tearing the country apart, to say that the citizens are not European enough. I think that's not a very wise way of addressing people who suffers at this moment from a constitutional crisis with a prime minister who doesn't handle the situation well at all. So I think this is not the way we should handle. We should, on the contrary, show that we are there, that we would like a better situation, that of course the dream is a future together, but that we respect the people, but that we don't see that the Prime Minister is doing enough to help the people.
Yeah. OK, well, let's bring in Paul, who's on the line from Swansea in Wales, which is in the United Kingdom. Good evening. Via Skype, we must be said. I don't know if we've got the ability to see you, Paul, but our viewers do at home at least. Paul, do you feel a part-time European?
No, not at all.
Well, so you feel you don't? Oh, well, there you are. Do you feel a full-time European then, or not European at all?
I'm European, and everybody in the UK is European. We're part of a continent, and there's no getting away with that. Even when Brexit finally happens, we'll still be Europeans, but we'll be relatives of the mainland Europe. We're only leaving a trade deal. We're not leaving or cutting the umbilical cord to the European continent. I found Juncker's comments unnecessary, and he's rather arrogant. He came across in his interview actually with a degree of arrogance anyway. But he seems to have a short memory when it comes to what Britain or the UK has done for Europe over the last century alone, fighting 2 world wars, giving economic aids to destabilise Europe, eventually joining the EEC, even though the French president, which is was an ally in the Second World War, did veto us joining. And likewise, we've contributed vast amounts of money annually to the European project, which ultimately is related to our GDP, but nevertheless it's a vast amount of money compared to other country members within the European Union.
Okay,
so he's got a short memory.
Paul, I'm going to work on the assumption here that you probably voted to remain, or would like to see Britain remain inside the EU. So do you not then think? Do you not think, when you look at what Jean-Claude Juncker said today, that it's a sign, people would say, of why Brexit happened? That he's out of touch, he doesn't understand what people in the UK think, and as you say, he came across as slightly arrogant. That's what Brexiteers say. Well, that kind of sums up Brussels to them.
To a degree, yes. I'm not a Remainer. I'm actually.
I didn't think he was.
Myself and my wife and members of my family voted Remain. But since this farce has been ongoing for 3 years, we quickly realised, and we became educated of how Europe is affecting our UK lives. And we're staunch Brexiteers now. We wish to leave. I wish to leave on no deal, so Britain or the UK can actually negotiate a deal with Europe on equal terms. And I don't feel that Barnier or his master Juncker has allowed those equal terms to flourish a negotiated withdrawal agreement. Okay. And that's the problem. Europe keeps saying we want the British to tell us what they want. I think it's quite clear what we want at the moment. Anyway, with Boris, he wants the backstop withdrawn, or some sort of mutual change to it.
Okay.
If that can happen, we can have a deal and we can leave on good terms, albeit Nigel Farage doesn't want those terms. He thinks the whole treaty is a betrayal of Brexit. But at least it's a step in the right direction. But the European Union, being the bloc, needs to make that decision if they want to negotiate seriously and remove the backstop.
Okay, Paul.
And let's face it. Go on.
Well, you could have a career in politics.
I was going to say, you will. We have to go to a break, so we're going to have to leave it there. But I think we got your point, and thank you very much for your call. Much appreciated. Amanda, who thinks that Juncker's out of touch, and obviously that Britain should leave the European Union.
There you go. We're going to have to take a short break, but afterwards we'll pick up on what Paul there in Swansea had to say. Get on the phones, though. They'll be on for another 15 minutes, so get in touch and tell us what you think about this.
Yeah, essentially, do you think if you live in the UK, you're a part-time European, or if you live elsewhere in Europe, are Britons part-time Europeans? Picking up on that in just a couple of minutes' time. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Raw Politics, your call from the European Parliament here in Brussels. We're going to pick up where we left off just before the break. Heard from Paul there in Swansea, who's kind of slightly outraged at what Jean-Claude Juncker had to say in an interview with Euronews earlier on today, in which he described Britain as essentially a part-time member of Europe or of the European Union. Let's start with you, Scott. Paul had a point there that, you know, you look at that interview, he did seem kind of like slightly out of touch, slightly arrogant, and that's maybe one of the reasons that people voted for Brexit. They look at someone like Jean-Claude Juncker and they feel that, what does he know about our country?
Well, I think that what's clear is that it's been such a divisive issue, and, you know, families have been, divided on this whole topic. And I think that information on both sides has been absolutely appalling. The comments that are made, I don't think it's really helpful. I think at the moment there's a kind of tendency to drive people towards one extreme or the other, and we've lost all nuance and sensible debate in the middle. So people that go from one extreme to the other, or expound one view to try and wind up another side. I mean, this is the tactics of chaos. It's the tactics of Trump and of Farage and Johnson, all these clowns that just expel these extremist views, lie sometimes, you know, let's call it like it is, completely making up fake news. I think that we have really got to stop being so wound up by that. You know, I don't think Juncker particularly meant that in such a demeaning way. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Everyone is a part-time
tragedy.
European.
Yes.
You're part-time French. You're part-time Swedish. You're part-time. You know.
I think you have to read Juncker in that context that he is leaving, that he has felt that Brexit was a big difficulty during his time, and that he allows himself to be a little bit more personal on his frustration. It's dumb I don't like it. I don't like that quote. But if we read it like that and understand that this is not the big politics, this is not the view from Brussels, from many of us. On the contrary, we feel that Britain is a very important member state, and that the people are big Europeans. We remember the history, but it was nice of Paul to actually talk about that. So I think the message should be, let's try to have a future together, as close to each other as possible. That is the view that I share with many of the colleagues in this House.
We'll say, getting onto your tweet in on this, hashtag raw politics. Philip Stewart saying that once again an English caller displays the lack of understanding of the need for the backstop and misled the idea that they will be able to deal with a body significantly larger than themselves on equal terms. Sigh. But people are really getting animated about water. We've got one man saying that water in restaurants must be free. The function of water on the table is different from that of wine or beer. By the way, some restaurants in Holland do not serve water for free, but this is getting more and more rare, fortunately. And Chris Wills is saying, if Belgian restaurants feel the need to charge customers for a basic human right, here, of free water due to business taxes and costs, does this not imply to poor domestic government, business legislation and barriers, rather than solving it with an unwelcome policy?
There you go. Lots of comments coming in there. Thank you so much for them. Our lines now will be open for a couple more minutes, so do get in touch. Give us a shout. Of course, it's a free phone number, but we're first going to take a very short commercial break.
Join us for the last 5 minutes, talking about water, part-time Britons being Europeans, and also our European way of life. Is Ursula von der Leyen right, or is she wrong? Join us next. Welcome back to Raw Politics, your call from the European Parliament here in Brussels. Into the last couple of minutes of the programme, we're talking tonight about whether Jean-Claude Juncker is right to describe Britons as part-time Europeans. And I think we've got someone on the line, have we? We have, but we've got a lot of comments.
We've got a lot of comments coming in tonight, and some personal comments about us saying that we look like farmers and speak like farmers. So I don't know if that's a compliment or if that is an insult, but I'll take it.
OK, I think we have got someone on Skype who's going to join us about this idea about whether we are part-time Europeans or not. No, it's on the European way of life. Aha, there we go. OK, well, let's bring them in on that. Do you agree with Ursula von der Leyen that there is a European way of life and that it needs protecting?
Hello?
Yeah. Hello.
Good evening, yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. I think that each region has its own way, actually, to promote their culture. So China is very proud of the culture that they have had. Asia, Persians, United States of America is like a country, but has different states. So I see also European Union as one country with a federal government, and they are just protecting the great values that they have built up during the years. So I think this is like a heritage that we can protect. It's not a bad way. It's not a racist thing. I think this is just promoting the value that European Union has worked pretty much hard to gain. So I look at this as a positive thing, not negative.
But Pedro, who are they protecting this against, though, or from? Sorry, who is the European Union protecting our identity from?
There is no protection behind it. It's just maintaining what we have gained. So we are not in a fight. We are not in a war with someone else. So I think that what we have gained, we are protecting it to not losing it. It shouldn't be against anybody spectacularly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Pedro from Oslo, thank you very much indeed for that Skype. Just very briefly, guys, your reaction to this.
No, I don't like that expression. I don't like it as a title. I think in this context, where it's about sending a political signal about something, I think most of us think that it's about saying you who don't are the same like us should not be in this union. And I think people will read that into it. Of course, I agree that we have many values to defend, democracy, to be open, the way we live. In that context, when you explain the values that we fight for, then it's a completely different thing. But in this way, described like this, it will be sending the signal that we don't want you. And I don't like that. So I think she needs to change it.
And Roy Gavin doesn't like it. He's written into us on Facebook saying, who created this situation whereby you need a commissioner for protecting your way of life? Shouldn't it be the Dutch way of life, the Spanish way of life, or the Estonian way of life?
Scott, what do you think?
Well, I think this is something that is lost in translation. But I mean, obviously not. If she's tweeting now that she stands by the title, I mean, even the commissioner themselves has dropped it kind of, to the side. I think that it does introduce this idea of someone being the other, and that we must protect us from the other. Do you know what? I've just launched a campaign in London to say London loves EU, because being a Londoner is not about the colour of your skin. It's not about your nationality. It's not about who you love or whatever. It is about celebrating our diversity and our inclusivity, and it's what makes London one of the greatest cities on earth that has a whole convergence of different people from different cultures living together. And the immigration is the lifeblood of London. But what this is doing, this dog whistle politics to placate the far right, it just sends out, as you say, the wrong signal.
Well, guys, thank you very much indeed for that, and thank you for joining us tonight. Let's get the last word. And we're going to give the last word to Ursula von der Leyen, who in the last couple of minutes, as Scott was alluding to, has tweeted, essentially saying that our European way of life is Article 2 of the Lisbon Treaty, which is that it is founded on respect for human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, and respect for human rights. That is her argument. It is one that's likely to carry on over the weekend. Thank you to you guys. Thank you to you at home for tuning in. That's it until next week in Strasbourg. Goodbye.
Good night.